Everyone knows who we are. Yeah, especially this guy. All right, we're with Mike Sanders from Ceretax, the CEO. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Danny, great to be here.
We surprised you a little bit with this cool studio and this setup.
Oh, I love it. It's very nice.
We got you all the way here from Atlanta.
There you go.
All right, let's before we dive into the meat of Ceretax and your business, we've spent plenty of time together, but I figure I'd use this opportunity to go a little deeper and get to know Mike Sanders a little bit better. Tell me about your family.
So lucky enough to have been married to Susie for going on 31 years this year. Have 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl. Soon to have a daughter-in-law coming this summer, so excited about that. Watch it grow. 2 out of college, 2 in college, and 1 at home. So I'm right in the thick of it right now. So a great family. So with the daughter-in-law coming, hopefully we'll have an expanded family here coming soon as well.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It'll be Grandpa Mike.
There you go. Full house for sure on holidays.
That's great. Very good.
Yeah.
What about your hometown? Tell me more about where you're from.
Yeah, so my father was an IBMer, so we moved a good bit when I was really young, and then ended up in Atlanta in one of the suburbs called Dunwoody, Georgia. So grew up in right outside the perimeter, the OTP for those that know Atlanta, in Dunwoody, and pretty much grew up there all the way through elementary school through high school. So it was great because you got the closeness of the big city of Atlanta, but had the suburbs to kind of enjoy being out of the city a little bit. So very good place, very kind of warm, family oriented, a lot of professionals in that area. So had all the great amenities for growing up for sports and activities and youth, that kind of thing. So nice.
How far is that from Alpharetta?
Alpharetta is probably now about 20 minutes with all the construction.
Okay.
So pretty close.
And Alpharetta, of course, is where you guys are headquartered.
Yeah, North Atlanta, Alpharetta, up in the northern suburbs now. So, it's got its own nice little tech effect up there, but a great part of Atlanta to live in.
Okay.
And work.
Yeah. Tell me, speaking of Alpharetta and your guys' headquarters, I've been out there a couple times. Yeah. I'm curious, why did you guys choose that spot? Like, when you were starting Ceretax?
Yeah, well, I think the main reason it's close to where we lived. So it was close to home, but it's just a great area generally. You've got a lot of good amenities for, for hotels, for guests, for entertaining clients, for just general visiting of different activities. Plus it's it's up and coming. So from a community standpoint, great tech, focus, a lot of great people up there starting businesses. So for kind of the ecosystem for small businesses and startups and just the technologies, great culture, kind of a great up and coming environment for that as well. So I like to be on that more leading edge where we want it to be versus maybe some parts of town that are a little bit more entrenched.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you tell us more about your career? Talk about, if you did some college, did you leave the Atlanta metro area, and then talk about specifically like your career in your younger years. Like how did you even get to this point where you were in sales tax?
How did I get to sales tax? Yeah. So I left Dunwoody, went to college in Mississippi State. So Hell State for those who know. Loved it in Mississippi, met my wife there, had a lot of family there, but loved the change in kind of environment and culture, really small town, very family centric kind of culture there. Got entrenched really more in the technology field while I was there. It was up and coming where, it was kind of before the .com. And so things were in this real transition stage. So I got in that technology focus, and that led me to, never was a good software developer programmer, but I'd learned just enough to be dangerous. And so leaving college, I actually took my first job out of college with a small firm in Atlanta who was needed someone to program sales tax forms. And so I decided, well, I love this little programming language I've learned, and I can do a little bit of it and don't know a thing about sales tax. So why don't I go and see if I can at least program some forms and, earn some money? And it was in Dunwoody, so it was kind of close to where I grew up. So it was a kind of a nice overlay there. So took that job, and for some reason, really quickly, the whole sales tax kind of regime, the focus, it just all, for some reason, made sense. And so within a year, I was involved in more of the complex workflows and was taking over more of the technology kind of features, and pretty much got, I would say, become almost like a CTO level in 4 years in the small company. So it was a very, I guess, call it baptism by fire, because I went from knowing nothing to kind of being in the throes of all things sales tax, serving some very large customers, and I was in my mid-20s at the time. So Very interesting run there. So met my my partner at the time, Robert Dumas, who's now at another company in the space. Met him, and we started a company called Tax Partners that was on the filing side. So very similar to what you do. So decided to start a company at the time that was a little bit more operationally focused, to where we wanted to bring a lot of data in, crunch it fast, generate sales tax returns, do the filing and compliance. And so we launched that company in the late 90s. Had a great set of angel investors out of Atlanta who kind of took us under their wing in an incubator, got us out running quickly. And Tax Partners grew pretty fast. We went from starting it in the late 90s to actually growing it to doing about $1 billion a month in remittances, almost 66,000 filings a month, and then end up being acquired by Thomson Reuters. So that was a very fast business, great culture, great set of people, still interact with many of them today. But that was really, how do you mix this, what you've learned in sales tax and the technology, and how to mix it into a company that can then deal with a lot of large clients, AT&T and DirecTV and Liz Claiborne and many different telecoms at the time. So that was an interesting experience. So that was really my foray into sales tax. And then after that, took a little bit of a change of path after that acquisition, and then re-entered the space in 2010 and decided to start a company called SureTax, which was in a calculation side of the house. And SureTax was focused, well, it was really when the telecom sector was going from legacy telecom technology to voice over IP. So the thought at the time is that why don't we enter the market and start a company that is more like tax over IP, where you can take technology, you can take an API, you can do calculations for this complex industry, but not have to have the legacy big on-prem implementations, doesn't require the big four to come on site. And why don't we make it so it's more of a lightweight calculation engine that's API based, specifically for the telecom vertical market, because it's very complex. So we did that, and pretty soon after we launched, we got a call from the head of partnerships over at Wolters Kluwer CCH, another big player in this space, and they have the content, so they have the tax rates and the tax rules, and wanted the technology. So it was like, hey, can we maybe partner up and have a strategic alliance to where you build the technology, you service it, we'll bring the content, we'll bring our a great brand, our team to market, and we'll launch that. So actually did that. Had a great team at Wolters Kluwer when we started. That ran about 5 years, and then kind of like these strategic alliances work when you have the large company and the small company, they decided to bring us in to modernize their portfolio after about 5 years. And so that led SureTax to then be acquired by Wolters Kluwer, and then ran that for several years, and probably would have been there a little bit longer. But unfortunately, there was a leadership team change, so caused us to decide to move on probably a little bit earlier than we would have otherwise. But a great experience, and so that was kind of what led me up to this kind of point today.
Okay, well, and when you exited from there, and then did you have some kind of sabbatical or like another break where you're just kind of resetting? And then as you talk about how you and your founder, you call it your founder team,
Mm-hmm.
and you can go into depth with that too, but talk about what was the genesis of then saying let's do this again, let's create Ceretax. Talk more about
Absolutely. That. So when we left the Wolters Kluwer SureTax experience, my partner at the time, Brent Reeves, who had been we've been friends for 30 plus years, had kind of gone through the whole motions of that. We had a typical big company purchase. There's a time you have to non-compete, you have earnouts, and you have deal book, and so actually very successful in that regard. I think at the time one of the best ones they had kind of to date. But we needed some time to kind of pause and let that run its course. And so, thinking about, do we want to re-enter the sales tax space? If we did, what would we want to do, and how would we want it to focus? And so we really just started, kind of quietly talking to clients, and just keeping relationships open, talking to clients and partners, and what are they seeing in the market, and what are you feeling, and what would be a great way to, if we decided to re-enter, what would be the great way to do it. And so it took about 2 years just to evaluate what that would be and how we would want to enter it. And so we literally one day, I remember Brent and I, and we went out to, I think his lake house on a whiteboard, and we listed the top 20 things that we didn't want to deal with anymore. So what from a support perspective was, we didn't want to have to handle, what clients would always tell us they wish they had, what are some things that we always heard it'd be great if you could do this, or in the future if we could do this. And so we took that as kind of our design mantra to say, okay, all the things that we don't want to have to deal with next time around, what will that be?
And are you saying that in a sense, like you were trying to build a solution that solved those problems, or more just like as you build this company?
Yeah, it was like more
we
the
don't want to deal with
like
that.
the design,
Like
so
compliance.
yeah, well, like it'd be more like what do you deal with today? Well, we don't want to have because with SureTax there was a constant support loop that we're always in. So people needing something, need help with this, or running reports and getting data out, or all these kind of workflows that we always had our finger in. And so it was like, well, how can we build a system that doesn't do that or have that as much? And then what are the things we always hear from like I got the CFO suite that they would like to have that we weren't doing at the time? So a lot more things around, it'd be great if you could provide more analytics, or if you had more, these specialized reports or ability to feed into these other backend platforms, or, give us line of sight across multiple revenue streams. Hey, we'd love you to have telecom, but I have 4 other divisions and I'd love to be able to consolidate those. So those are the kind of things we thought about. So we interviewed partners and just got a feel for, okay, where in the market do you think there's opportunity? Because obviously at this time we're post Wayfair, and so the market is dynamically changing after we left before. We're seeing new entrants starting to sniff around the market and enter sales tax for the first time. So we didn't want to be a me too, but we wanted to say, how do we capitalize on our learnings today to our experiences, and where could we really think we could add value that we're hearing from all these partners and ex-clients? And so that evaluation took us a while, and we said, okay, well, if we do it this time, we want to do it ourselves and not be beholden to a partner like Wolters Kluwer for content. So we have to figure out how to build all this great content. We'd like to be able to do our citusing ourselves. That means when something is taxable, how do we know where it is? So is there a possible way that I could know where the address is or the rooftop is? How would we do that? And then think about, well, what is the next generation like from a technology gonna be looking for? So all those kind of thought processes led us to say, well, it sounds like what we need to do is take the complexity that we've learned and all these other learnings and enter in the mid-market, U.S. mid-market, which means no one's entered that space. We're going to be competing with a couple of the large behemoths, the Avalaras and Vertexes, who have been here forever. Going to go right into their turf, and we're going to have to do it pretty much all ourselves from scratch. And so it was a pretty big undertaking. So that was originally what we decided to do. And kind of led us off of this journey to say, okay, well, can we assemble a team? Can we bring in enough funding? Can we actually bring this vision to life? So that was kind of the impetus of where we wanted to do. So that was the kind of the seed of launching Ceretax.
And as you focused on solving problems, building a solution, like you said, this whiteboard session, and then you just mentioned the big players that are already in this space. Was that a big part of your guys' approach to building Ceretax, to say like these are problems that these bigger players are not solving, or here are issues that their client base has, constant complaints or issues that they're dealing with? Was that a significant part as well of like how you guys built Ceretax?
It actually was. We spent a lot of time thinking about that. So once we kind of looked at, I'll call it like our thesis, what was our thesis for launching Ceretax? So it was, okay, can we take all the learnings we've had from the real hard tax world of telecom, which is a very complex, hard from a tax perspective with, rates and unit-based fees and sliding scales and tax on tax and all these different algorithms. Could we take that and make that the base, and then add on the ability to grow over time, both horizontally to take on more specialized markets, and then have a vision to go up market? So originally it was stabilize in the U.S. mid-market, but is there a pathway to go up market to start serving at a broader level? So unlike a lot of these others in the incumbents in the market, they started with general sales tax and then either tried to bolt on, acquire, these other complex pieces over time. So with us, it was in reverse. Let's do the hard stuff and see if we can get that data model put down strong. And then that gives us a lot of ways we can expand both horizontally and vertically in the market to kind of go attack those incumbents. And then it was all around modern technology, reporting. How do we do anything in the system that's going to be transparent to allow line of sight later on? So that was really the kind of the thesis behind it. And so that's what we ended up doing, is saying, okay, we're going to launch right here, mid-market, very complex, taxes. We'll start back in telecom. So we just kind of call it the fish to the pond to ocean strategy. Let's, fish the pond we know, and that'll take us to the broader ocean of sales tax. So that is what we did. We built it around that complexity to say hard stuff in telecom and energy taxes, but we know over time we can solve this across a wider net. And then eventually we knew that would lead us up market.
Yeah, as complex as sales tax and use tax are, there's even more complexity, right? Like you're saying in telecom and energy.
That's right.
So the as you built that for the mid market, right? This is great because I've known you guys for several years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about the way you guys have built this, but this is good because I'm learning more than I ever have, right? With that in particular, or that in mind of building out the most complex pieces and solving the most complex problems, and creating a platform that actually is a solution for these businesses, mm-hmm. right? Your clients who really do have the most complex, rate requirements, you could say. I think that's something that pretty much anyone can appreciate. Of like, if you imagine just building the most simple, spreadsheet that's going to just be like your calendar, compared to like going in right away and like actually building something that's going to solve problems in your day-to-day. Like, it makes sense to build it to solve the most complex problems, and then working from there, you have a way better foundation. Was that part of your approach?
Yeah, it was
a way better foundation to actually then solve the more simple problems that are still big problems, right? Because if you talk about sales tax in particular, it is a massive problem when you consider the rates, right? Mm-hmm. People always talk, nobody knows the actual number of jurisdictions, but usually the number I hear is around 10,000 different tax jurisdictions, right? In the U.S. So having a solution that seems simple, like when the person in St. Louis, Missouri goes and buys a product online and they check out, it's of course simple as far as the process to them of like, oh yeah, here's the tax rate at my house. Naturally they're going to charge me that tax rate. Well, of course, on the back end of the actual software that's powering that, there's a lot of complexity to getting that rate exactly right. And in fact, this goes back to something you brought up. When you are considering all those different tax rates, like, what is the most correct way to do that, to build an engine, right? And how did you guys approach that? And ultimately, how did you build the best solution that gives you the most accurate rates?
Well, I would say the real reason we were able to do that is, I would say, we put the core band back together. So brought a lot of my team members back from actually my first company, Tax Partners, brought some of those members back. And then, of course, building a great network over my days at SureTax. I mean, great network of people. So we were able to reach out to everyone we'd love to have on the team and kind of build the all-star team. And then soon thereafter brought a few more on that really were able to help us build this out. I mean, I think to the next level. So one of the names we talk about, Moshe Weingarten, who we brought on early. I mean, absolute like domain expert, superstar. I still can't believe we were able to bring him on as one of our first employees. And he helped build out all the complex data models. So it was great to have, my kind of mad scientist whiteboard version. And then for Moshe to say, I understand, let me show you how we're going to operationalize this and put it into motion and be able to handle it and grow. And then my team, Adam and Andrew, that we brought back from my SureTax days, to build the technology, understand exactly what we're talking about. Let me work with Moshe and we'll build out the workflows to scale this. And so it was really, I think, a linking of kind of coming together of the minds and linking of the arms and saying, we all kind of see what this is. And we all kind of got in our respective camps and started to build it. The third piece of that would have been, of course, all the research. We brought Linda on, who I knew from Wolters Kluwer for years, who ran our research. And so she started gathering all the research data. And then the one piece we had to build from scratch, not knowing a thing, was the GIS, the geospatial. So how do we know where all these tax boundaries are, like in Missouri, where you have a ton of these little districts that stack on top of each other? How will we determine that? So went on a long exploration of how do we figure this out and build GIS. So I went from even not knowing what a polygon was to now having a database, if you will, of every single city, county, state, and specialty district mapped in our own system, where we can draw the boundaries and outline it. Which is, I still today can't believe we were able to accomplish all that.
How does that compare to most tools that are out there?
I think most tools today either use more of a legacy postal code, zip code type of process, to where they get it close within a zip code or a zip +4. They may have some GIS that does something maybe on, drawing some tax boundaries, but it's not where it's all unified into one. So for example, in our system, you can pass it in a zip code, a zip +4, a full address, phone number, MPA, NXX, whatever it is. We're always going to render it to a lat long set of coordinates, try to pin it to a rooftop, and then that'll give us, the precision to know, okay, we know where kind of the flag has been planted, and then as the tax boundaries move, we'll know exactly which ones intersect where that flag is pointed. So it gives us absolute precision today. And not only that, we're able to show it to our clients and kind of prove it. So one funny story in that regard is we were pitching a very large company you would know very well in the petroleum space. And so one of the questions they gave us as part of our online demo was a very specific address. I forget what state it's in, and they wanted us to show how we were going to tax it. And they wanted us to show it, show our work. And what we come to find out in before the presentation, but we found that it was a large building that was actually intersected by two tax jurisdictions, to where left side of building was rate 1 and right side was rate 2. So not only were we able to show them that on as far as the tax rate, but we actually pulled up the map, showed our GIS boundary, splitting the building, and you could just hear the gasps that they couldn't believe that they had that level of granularity that both of you actually solved it, because they were like, we've been struggling for this for years and no one could ever get the concept, and here we're seeing you guys separate the building into two parts. So that's when I felt like, oh, I think we may have actually really built something here that can serve these larger clients. So that's when it all came to light, to where we computed the right rate. We actually had the great taxability research. We could show them the why we taxed it, but hey, let me also show you the tax boundary and how it got so specific for this particular building. So that's when I think, when I was in the presentation, going, oh wow, this is all, the vision is finally realized. It's all coming together to where we actually can solve for the complexity, but give them comfort that we'll be able to show you kind of behind the curtain how it's being done.
Yeah, and it's again one over and over again, as we're talking about this, it's so clear why sales tax can be and really is so complex. And as you consider, excuse me, as you consider breaking it down into just simple math and just simple concepts for even just the mid-range businesses,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mid-sized businesses to understand is, if you're doing tens of thousands of transactions, even hundreds of thousands or more, you're doing millions and millions, even tens of millions of dollars, north of $100 million in revenue. Small percentages, of course, add up, right? And it becomes a significant liability if you're not doing it correctly.
That's right.
And this was one of my questions for you when I consider, being in the sales tax space, and it really is just such a goofy thing, right? It's a goofy space. It's one of the, it's tax. So of course, most people are going to say, just get rid of it. That's easy to say, but with sales tax in particular, right? It'd be so nice to just say, here's a flat rate for every state, right? And even if the states all had their own rates and, manage sales tax themselves, that would be nice.
Right.
But
not nice for my business, but it would be nice conceptually.
Exactly. But as you talk about just helping people understand just how important it is to, handle the complexity and just what goes into it. This is such a good example of all these details that need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And then to take all that, build it, and then create something that's simple enough for the business owners, for the people running the business, right? What was your approach with that when it comes to the actual, you could call it the UI and the UX,
Mm-hmm.
right? How your clients are actually dealing with it. What was your approach with that?
Well, I would think at first it starts with knowing that, like you said, that sales tax is very complex. There's a lot of nuance. It's growing since the Wayfair decision in 2018. It's been growing rapidly and causing a lot of businesses, concern and confusion. So I think generally, first of all, is you've got to have a great relationship with your clients to understand their business, their practices, what's concerning them, what they'd like to have happen. So you have that relationship with them to know that we're locked in this together. We are a partner with you, understand your business, and going into this solution, we have a good understanding of what you really need. So I think that relationship aspect is true for the life of the engagement, right? It's not just part of implementation, but the whole time that they're clients. We want to be very partner with them. We want to understand. But that then leads to making sure that we have, yes, a system that's easy to use and you can apply all the complex rates and give them all the right outputs. But again, we want to think of it more from the mindset of how are we going to give our clients the best long-term solution, which means can we give them some tools that allow them to handle the complexity? So for example, maybe they need to have things like bundles, or maybe they have some specialized allocations, or they want to take some exemptions on taxes that may be partial. And so can we provide them a great, like a rules engine to allow that to happen so they can have that complexity built into our system? But again, when we do that, you have to always think that down the road, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, auditors are going to show up and they want to say, okay, well, what did you do and why did you do it? So the other thought process is that we have to make sure that no matter what happens from source revenue to the final tax outcomes, through our process, that we can always unwind it and give them the full transparency to show them, what was modified, what was changed, what kind of algorithms or rules did you apply, what exemptions went into effect, and how did that impact that final amount of tax that got remitted or invoiced. And so, from a workflow perspective, it was, number one, making sure that we were tight with our clients relationship wise. Number two said, yes, we've got a great set of tools and workflows within our platform that allow you to handle some of the complexity and get the back end reporting, but we're not gonna, forget about you years from now when auditors show up, because we want to make sure that if you're there or your predecessor's there, they always will have a clear understanding. Hey, in 2029, what happened in 2025 in our platform? What was set up? Who set it up? Why was it set up? What are all the different things that happened to the data when it came from the source system to the final output? And so that was probably one of the more challenging things we thought through, is to make sure that we had a complete line of sight to say, down the road, you always will have a great idea of what happened into the system as far as your data. So yeah, complex things happen, but complex things shouldn't happen at the detriment of having the transparency that you'll need down the road. And so that was really part of the user experience, as well as how do you take this hard, complex stuff, add all this transparency to it, but make it in an interface that people can understand. It doesn't become like you don't need to have a computer science degree to run it. It can be a little bit more common, kind of a common workflows and themes that any tax person can use. So that what drove our design, because we wanted to make it like a complex system that was easy to use, I guess, and gave them comfort that they would have this capability, down the road.
One of the things, as you talk about that jumps out to me too, is one of the most important things when you have a business and you have customers is the human element, right? Your guys' approach to just building all the data, the database, the tools, right? All the complexity that goes into Ceretax, and then you consider what you were just describing, like, can anyone at any point in that company come in and get the information they need? Well, one of the key ingredients to that is having the support, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons we've loved partnering with Ceretax. It's one of the most important things that stuck out to us early on is, we started partnering with you guys probably 4+ years ago. Yeah, actually, I was with Peter yesterday, just looking at a document actually from 2022. And I was like, wow, it's been that long already. It's been 4 years. So that's beautiful. But again, the point being that as we started talking with you guys and having discussions around partnership and, how do we work together, and just the approach is the same, right? Mm-hmm. It's taking care of people. It's solving a problem. So these business owners and people working in the business and on the business can actually do what they do best. And again, an important part of that is just helping those people by having, humans to have conversations and help them understand, just answer the questions and solve the problems. I'm curious how much thought went into that, or if it was more as far as you guys building Ceretax when it came to the support and having that human piece there. How much thought went into that versus it just being a natural thing in the way that you guys just do business?
I think it was very core. It was very core to our being, because we, kind of from a company culture perspective, we all have this, hope in our core is we have like this servant mentality. We want to serve our clients. We want to serve them with excellence. We want to be very open and transparent and honest. So, those are, people say those things, but we really try to drive those deep into the way we serve our clients, we operate. But again, and to your point is that when we go from the relationship of like a sales meeting or a sales process, and then it becomes live and now we're implementing and we have customer success involved. Again, luckily we had a great teammate, Kelsey, that came in from industry, took over our customer success team and kind of knew that it was going to be very much that relational, I'm going to call it hand holding, but a very relational process to where we wanted to make sure they were guided through it. We're not just going to turn them over. Hey, here's some documentation. Good luck. Or, call us if you need us. It was more of a very hopefully collaborative approach. And so taking that very strong, kind of customer support, we're going to serve you with excellence. We're going to stay very much involved is what drove that. So you've got it where, you have your initial contact, it goes through customer success and very much, like I said, very active involved. And so any kind of triage needed or escalation, we have a team from anywhere from customer success to product. And even me, it's like, if we have a large client that needs something, they have my personal cell phone and they can ring me and say, what do you need? Because we want to make sure they're being served. And I think that's really to our core. So the core vision was always, serve customers with excellence. But how do you bring that to life? Well, you bring it to life by every day answering the tough questions, and making sure that you're, dealing with any kind of issues that come along. And so I think if you really value your clients as far as hearing what they say, understanding their concerns, understanding what their needs and deadlines are, not just a vendor, but kind of knowing what their hot buttons are, you establish that rapport to where, okay, we have a misstep, something didn't work according to plans, but you have that relationship to where we can make it right, we can fix it, we can get back on the track. And I think that's what makes them long-term clients, because they know they can trust us, that will be there. Or we've even had one that said, oh, we just found out that we have an acquisition coming along. It's going to change our whole footprint. We have this thing's happening. And we come in, I wouldn't say consultants, but say, oh, let us walk through it and kind of explain what we can do, how we can help you in this regard, and just give them some comfort that from our perspective that they'll have someone that can be their advocate to help them kind of walk through it, and not just, hey, call us when you have a data feed. So again, hopefully as we grow and scale, we can keep that culture and that mentality. I know it's easier said than done, but I think that core, that servant mentality, always being part of that relationship and just trying to do our best to understand the client's business and what they need is really, I think, what drives that.
Yeah, and even with those core values and that approach, you got to have great people, right? Which is, again, something that sticks out to me with Ceretax. I'm curious, as you were building, and this goes back to a little bit of what you discussed as you were, putting together the team. What was your approach then? And maybe it's even better said if you reflect back on that, like what were kind of the key things that you focus on in bringing that team together, like with you and Brent, and then you talk about Moshe and your early, founding team, you could say, as you break it into kind of two parts. What was your focus then as far as pulling the team together? And then now, as you talk about your team and then this focus of, the servant mentality and just generally, like, what are the values that drive you in building a successful team now?
Right. Well, being in a startup is really challenging in lots of ways, because you're trying to grow fast and you have to have people that are willing to, wear different hats and jump in at any moment's notice. And you talk about collaboration, but it's really like all of us are on the feeding line at any time. So we all do everything. But it was making sure we had people that understood that kind of client service mentality, that were willing to collaborate. We needed no kingdom builders here, because again, everyone's going to have to get their hands dirty, get involved in all the kind of nitty gritty. Could they really work as a team together and communicate? And really wanted it to be around, kind of problem solving. And again, I hate to use cliche, but it's like you think about the round table concept. We're all at a round table. We're all equals here. Clients in the middle. We're all going to serve it. We're all going to solve this problem. So can we have people on the team that think in that regard as well? Because what I don't need are, I don't need lone rangers. I don't need kingdom builders. I don't need someone who's got their own objectives, kind of, antithesis to the kind of the core vision. And so it's kind of hard to, have that come to surface. And at the same time say, oh, by the way, we're in a startup. We're going to grow fast. Hair's on fire every day. We're going to have to do whatever we can to, to get to the next goal. But it takes a good bit of just finding that. So it's not always a perfect exercise. We've had some misses in that regard. But again, once you find that team that's willing to do that and collaborate, really you can move mountains with your team. Once your team is all locked in and our cogs working with a common goal, can work together, that can communicate. You can really do great things together. At the same time, trying to grow fast and having all the kind of pressures like in our world when we have large, investment and VC backing. So there's always that kind of mix of keeping who we are, keeping the clients happy, grow fast, and then just handle all the pressures of how do we, go faster.
the question that pops up as you talk about that, just those challenges of the startup life. And I'm sure we could talk for days actually about some of the memories and the experiences and the ups and downs. Any founder, could relate to a lot of what you would talk about. So, and you talked about, the problem you wanted to solve, the problem that you have solved and are continuing to solve around sales tax in the industry and what these clients and businesses face. I want to ask why in a different way. Like, why would you put yourself through this? Like, what was it that drove you to even want to do this?
Yeah, that's probably a good question. Why would I want to come back for a third time? I think it was just the drive. I mean, kind of in my core, personally, kind of a serial entrepreneur and wanted to build something of value. But I think also, like I said, once you've been in this space for so long, and then you're out of it, and you have kind of the comfort to just on your own go out and interview partners and clients and kind of get back and just ask them, okay, what do you like? What do you don't like? What is your pain point? What's happening? And then in your mind, you start thinking, oh wow, we can actually provide that solution. We can actually do that. Well, I know we can actually put a team together. And so you start getting this idea of like, in my mind, especially, it's like the problem solving. We can actually bring something to life that's good. We can put a team together that can do it. So you start to really get that, I guess, that adrenaline rush of saying, yes, we can actually solve problems, make these people happy, hopefully build a company of good culture and of value, and build something that will last. And so I think that was really at the core what we saw doing, coming back one more time. But then again, having enough of the independence to say, but only if we can do it, like I said, do it ourselves, where we don't have to rely on a partner. So I think that's what motivated us to do it. So yeah, it was a lot of I guess gut wrenching discussions there. I'm not a spring chicken obviously anymore, so doing it kind of this part of my my career path, the third time startup was definitely know what I was signing up for. And what made this one different, obviously, than before is that my previous two companies had angel backers. Well, this time we actually went out and got venture capital. So we're on a whole different spectrum of expectation of driving. So it took a lot, I guess, soul searching. But I guess once we got in there and knew that we were going to be able to kind of pull off the vision, and then we had the team to where we kind of had each other backs, it made it a little bit easier to say, hey, we're kind of all in this together. And then we were very fortunate to land a couple of large accounts right off the bat as design clients that allowed us to kind of prove it. And they were giving us good feedback and happy. And so I think that just kind of fed the realization that, hey, we actually can do this. And then it was like, okay, we're putting both feet in and going full steam ahead.
Are there, as you talk about that and, some of the early days of, some of these clients, and even as we talk about, the question you just answered of like, why would you put yourself through this again? Right. What can you pinpoint, like one or even two experiences you've had, over the last 4 or 5 years that call it the lowest points? Like, can you describe some of like the worst things that have happened as you've, done this with Ceretax and been building this?
Oh yeah, we've definitely had some low points so far along the way, to where we've had some great like expectations that we went into a certain engagement, felt like everything was in alignment, and then in the last minute, got some kind of information, or it was like the oh by the way that kind of disrupted at the last minute. So you've got this very well known large client, very well established brand. You have a commitment that you're moving forward. You're kind of at the goal line, and then just because of either maybe we didn't ask the right questions, or the client didn't disclose some of the things that, oh, by the way, caused that to not be successful kind of at the very last stage. And so you kind of got this deflated of all this opportunity cost we put into it. Everyone's got this expectation of we're moving forward. The client's got the expectation, and then you have to make the call. It's like, I just don't think these are all going to be in alignment. So you have to kind of deal with that deflating. And it's like, leave on good terms. Everyone kind of understands it, but we've had some of those so far to where, great learning experience, but it just allowed us to say, okay, next time we're going to be able to, ask tougher questions earlier, vet it a little bit harder, because in a small startup, those kind of deals are, make or break deals. And so there's a financial, impact to it, but there's also a company morale aspect to it as well. It's like, why did we took our shot, we missed, what happened? So we've had one of those early on in 2023 that was tough to kind of get over. And then the other part of it, I would say the low point for us, and again, this happened to many companies, but we're growing in this, this space. We're going from a SaaS business to kind of an AI focused business, and got caught up in the whole investment world, Silicon Valley Bank and all that, to where we were driving down one path, and then the market dynamics changed and caused us to say, wow, what we're building is now not in alignment with what the investors expect. So it caused us to have a whole company pivot just to kind of react to the investment market. And so that was pretty challenging because, we were growing fast and we're adding staff and building product. And then suddenly it became, okay, how much are you spending? What are you spending it on? And so it was kind of like someone changed the actual algorithm on us mid drive. So
that kind of answers the question I had as you talked about that, but
yeah.
talk more about that of like how it sounds like you were building a certain way, your team was set up a certain way, you're even spending money on certen things. And is that accurate of like those types of things?
Yeah,
we grew. Can you talk a little bit more?
Yeah,
about
grew
that?
the business. We had several. We had, we had over $1 million, I guess, of deals that were booked. We think we were going to close. This is in, I think, in 2024. Things moving great, and then we were going out to do another fundraising. We were getting our fundraising round, but really our growth. Okay, now we've got our seed funding. Now this is our Series A. We need to have a big investment because now we're going to go and shoot for the stars. And then that's when, like I said, the market changed, and then it became about, okay, well, I see how you're growing at this clip and what you're doing, but tell us how much you're spending and why you're spending on this. So it became from a growth number to a spend number, and then unfortunately for us, it caused us to have to really change the business and reduce our. We had to reduce our headcount by over half, and those are, very tough discussions about people that are part of the early team that have bought in, and you're just like, well, the market dynamics have changed, and now the reality is for us to move forward as a business, we have to be in proper metrics and proper alignment with what the investment community is expecting now. And so it caused us over the course of about 4 months to have to really change our cost structuring and our spend footprint, keep everyone else that was there still motivated, that were an ongoing concern, in order to kind of hit that new reality. And then fortunately, I would say probably at the very ninth hour, we had a great partner, S3 Ventures out of Austin came through. They loved the vision. They had, I would say, a lot of negative experiences with the incumbent providers. So there was always already a little bit of that emotion part of it, dug into it, and then were able to kind of be the perfect fit for us. So they were like, we know what you're building. We understand what you're trying to build. We understand why you want to compete with these legacy incumbents. Yes, you have a different kind of business metric ratio makeup than kind of what the larger community sees, but we understand this. And so they came in and provided our seed funding, and also were more of a operational coach as well, not just a firm that's going to show up at board meetings and going to kind of harass me for an hour and then come back. But they stay very in tune with us. And so Leaders Fund, who was our original seed investors, S3, came together and then said they kind of locked arms in that vision and said, okay, you stabilized the business, you kind of adapted to what the market expected. So now we'll work with you and kind of get back to that growth trajectory now that the market, factors are changing again. So yeah, that was definitely a low point because, like I said, you hate to say goodbye to people. You have to change your spend. You have to stop initiatives. You have to rethink everything you're doing and look under every part of, pull up every stone to see every penny in the business and what you're doing to get those thresholds right. But luckily, again, with the thankful of having some good, original kind of angel investors in the beginning, these good investors that came in, and then our core team were able to adopt and then get our Series A. And then from there, we've just, like I said, kind of been off to the races.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, we've experienced some of that with you guys, right? We've seen, I remember even having the conversations with S3, in fact.
Oh, yes.
About,
I'm sure they interviewed you along the way to make sure that we were, on the up and up.
Yeah. And part of it, I remember, you talk about the incumbent providers, and it was actually a really solid discussion, I'd say, with them, because it's the right questions to ask. Like, what is not just the opportunity to capture market share, but like, what are the problems, not just that companies are facing because of sales tax, but because of the lack of solutions or what the incumbent providers do or do not provide, right? And those are cool discussions to have, because they're the exact types of problems that you guys have solved for customers. Again, not sales tax in particular, but again, back to the human element and the support, and just that's oftentimes what these companies need is, because someone new comes in, or they don't want to be sales tax experts, and they shouldn't be sales tax experts. So when it comes to the sales tax problems, and certainly the software and the compliance, like, it's just important to have someone there to answer some of these questions that are sometimes basic. They certainly become basic to us because we talk about it all day, every day.
Right.
But it's important just to be able, that resource, especially outside of, like Chat GPT, because
Right.
you can ask Chat GPT and then go to Gemini, and
Right.
then you could even go to the state and talk to someone. And we all know that you might get 3 different answers, even when you talk to different people at the state.
That's right.
So it's just nice to have a advisor there, and you guys really operate in that way for your clients. I've seen it firsthand. You have questions like, we're here, we have the expertise, because naturally you guys do, right? With all the experience and the team that you guys have in place. So
yeah, we do. And then kind of looking forward from here, as we've grown, kind of the way that we got to position and think about it now is that there are a lot of new entrants in the sales tax space. We think of it more in the SMB space, where we're more mid to upper market. And so as we thought about it, and like working with your team, it's that we want to now consider ourselves to be more of the platform provider. So what can we do to enable a technology and offering that allows our partners to drive services? So you want to build a practice around it. Tell us what you would like. Tell us the kind of workflows you would like to have in the system, and we'll adopt the system to accommodate that. So we're about being a true tax platform. We're not here, we're not getting services. We're not offering any kind of services, but have our partners deliver services. So it's like, what can we do? What can we help make your world better, or give you the tools you need? Or, historically tax teams are not the highest on the list, companies that get IT, support. And so if we can provide more things that they can have access to, or provide practices around, or give them insights into, that's what we want to think about. So how can tax departments, finance teams start getting workflow tools, reporting, analytics, maybe even connect into some of these AI tools, if it gives them something that they can have a value and say, I can finally escape Excel and get a broader base of what I need today. So kind of our focus is, we're still growing and we're still part of this upmarket trend. But again, we want to be different than all the others, is that we want to enable our partners to now be successful by saying, tell us what you need and how can we make our system, our platform, our interfaces, better for you. And that's how we're pivoting now as we think about kind of our next evolution, because it's going to get more complex as we go about market and deal with more, larger companies in different diverse industries. But again, the main thing is that, are we offering a solution, a platform, a full service, scaled system that provides those levels of opportunities for partners and tax teams and finance teams to utilize us in a broader way?
Yeah, and as you talk about that, of like what you're building in your approach, and even tying that into what we just talked about and some of the lows and like biggest challenges you've had, like what are some of the biggest wins, and even some of the biggest opportunities that you see right now in front of you guys?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I'm really, it's going to sound cliche, but one of the things I'm really into personally as well as professionally is AI. But again, we talk about AI, it's got a really big, broad brush of what that means. I think today, I think I realized about 2 weeks ago, is that we think of AI very transactionally. I need this, I get this response. I need this, I get this response. But I've been trying to think a little bit more broadly about how do we use it more of the logic and decisioning, how we can do more in that kind of thought process, workflows, interfusing in our daily activities to provide more value. And so I think that is where we're, as a company, trying to think, and even in my personal life, thinking that as well, because I don't think we've quite conceptualized or quite understood the long-term value of what it's going to bring. And again, we think of it more of, I need this, give me this back. So from a company perspective, again, one of the benefits we have is that when we first architected Ceretax, is that we built it to be very modular. So not to get too technical, but the way that the system is architected is that it's a bunch of little microservices at step that build the calculation process. So you can think of it as a bunch of connected Legos, for a simple example, right? So you have Lego 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and as long as Lego 4, all I need is what Lego 3 passes me, and I know what I got to pass on to Lego 5, and what I do is independent. So that kind of design concept has naturally led to have easy insertion of AI into that workflow. So I could always put a 3B in place that could do whatever I need to do to allow that to happen. So if, let's say, for example, if you had a large client that wanted to do some kind of advanced, deviance tracking or analytic tracking or some kind of fraud analysis or some kind of financial reconciliation as part of the calculation workflow using AI, it just naturally dovetails into how we built it. I would love to say we did it on purpose for that regard, but having that modular design allows that. So now I'm thinking more along the lines of, what are some more of these logic decision patterns we can put in place in the calculate or the broader workflow, using AI that could provide that level of value. Right now, we've got one that's going to be very obvious. We're launching here pretty soon. I can't really announce it today, but we have got a new solution we're going to be delivering here by the end of the quarter that has native AI decision making in it, and is doing some really amazing things as far as logic built into it as part of that native design. So a lot of the thinking will be more encompassing that. And again, we're not offering a chat bot. We're not offering these little pieces. But what again, going back to who we're serving, is that if I go out and I have a true AI solution and I'm going to go to a CFO or VP of finance, number one, it's got to be something truly of value to say, okay, I have a tool here that I can use that's really going to provide me something I didn't have before. Number two, it's got to say your data's safe. Okay, your data's in a bubble. Yep. It's not leaking out to the public world. We're going to keep it safe. And then number three, and I think in our case, is that we've used it internally now for several months. So it actually works and provides value internally. So I can say, yeah, we use it internally and love it. So let's take it externally and have you use it as well. So that is, I think, where we're going today. Again, is part of the AI. I call it the AI revolution. But again, I'm trying to really think of it more, I think, fundamental than just being more of a transactional partner. It's going to be more of something that provides deeper logic analysis in the whole kind of Ceretax, operational workflow.
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind as you talk about that, of course, one of the things that is most exciting about AI in general is, like you said, not transactional, just like I need this and it answers it, right? It's more of the agents, right? Like building tools and actually have AI working for you as a way that I picture it, right? Or envision it, where it's working while I'm not, right? Or it's working on things that I don't necessarily need to or want to, because it can do that. And it's just, it just creates more capacity, right? With individuals and with your team. So I see some of that certainly as you describe what you guys have built. And like you said, even, whatever piece of it were unintentional, like it's golden, right? It's great that you're in a place to be able to build that. When you consider that, the other piece to what I, hear as you talk about this is AI actually showing you problems that you would never be aware of otherwise. Asking questions even that you would never ask. And in some cases, even asking those questions or presenting those problems that like your advisor, like people like us that are the experts, aren't going to see, because we're not in the, the depths, you could say, of that whole data that you have. And that's one of the cool things I see with AI, or the capability of AI and what you guys are building, is when you talk about analytics, right? It can get into a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Like certainly even a lot of what you're talking about is way above, my pay grade. And, it's not even English to me, right? In some cases, and it won't be to a lot of people, but put in another way, if you have all this data, because companies do, right? And it's not just about sales tax. It's about all the numbers. It's about all the data that goes into what makes up a business. So if you have a tool that's deep enough into the data, and also built in a way like Ceretax is to, analyze that data and pull together the pieces, and the point being, as that happens, it can bring things to the surface that you would never see otherwise, and it can be significant, right? Certainly on the financial side, it can be super significant because it can show blind spots,
right?
Help you create solutions for, some of your processes. The solution you're talking about that will be announced, later on. It can be just incredible volume, right? When you're talking about
tremendous,
just companies having to deal with this, and individuals in spreadsheets, and even when you have, a quote unquote tool that's helping with that, like it's not enough most of the time for a lot of these businesses that have just significant volume of not just revenue, but customers, vendors. Like it's just a major issue, right? The companies deal with. So how, when you think about, again, the future of what you guys are building, and just building around AI, that taps into one of the questions I for sure wanted to ask, is like what the future looks like, and get more specific into like even what's on the roadmap for, this year and then ultimately, like what are the goals for you and your partners, your your team, and then even talking about, you know, your VC partners and like, what are you guys, what's Ceretax going to look like in 3 years, in 5 years?
Right. Yeah. I think a lot packed into that question.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that from an AI kind of a feature, what I'd like to be able to do is that, you know, depending on the size of the company, most tax departments, obviously their primary focus is income tax, and then maybe secondarily property tax. And then usually sales tax may be third on the list, just as far as what they deal with, because they see a lot of times you'll see sales tax, oh, it's administrative and not a lot of value add. I have to do all these processes. And then you kind of pull back the covers and say, okay, well, you've got 3 systems that are running, and you've implemented vendor 1 over here 5 years and never touched it. And this one's been running for another, you know, for all these years. And so we've always seen that it's just something that's in place, but they don't have line of sight, like the CFO or VP. I mean, they know the revenues, but I mean, what is actually happening under the hood? And then the second thing we see is that there's a lot of inefficiency just because, you know, people have not wanted to touch it, or maybe they, I don't know, maybe they just don't want to don't want to mess with it because it's working fine. And so what I'd like to be able to do is provide on kind of the benefit for our clients is to be able to go and say, all right, we're doing an AI analysis of this workflow. So let's say they have NetSuite, and they've implemented NetSuite 7 years ago, the tax vendor's in place, they have all these custom rules and Nexus threshold. Okay, let us go and do an analysis, almost like an efficiency analysis, so I can say, okay, here's what you're doing. And then when we identify what you're doing, we can say, well, you're doing a lot of things multiple ways. And number 3, can you tell us why you're doing that? And then we can go make it more of an efficient play to say, okay, well, when we implement, why don't we streamline this for you and maybe clean up some of these flows that you may not even realize that you're dealing with? So, I mean, a very extreme example is that we had a client that we implemented early on that had been using a vendor for, gosh, probably 10, 12 years, and had several thousand rules they'd set up to do all sorts of, you know, configurations and manipulations. And once we went in there and did some analysis, we were like, well, there's a lot of these rules, number one, are doing the same thing, or they're tripping over themselves. And so we were able to, in implementation, reduce them down to about 190 rules, and then gave the CFO, like, okay, here's what's happening. We put them in like categories. You can see these are the ones that do this, do this. And so I thought about, you know, companies that are dealing with maybe more complexity of, you know, credits or discounts, or they have all sorts of different, you know, customized workflows. Maybe we could provide something that does the analysis to say, okay, as the ones that are going to be receiving these revenue streams to do a tax calculation, let us do some analysis and maybe give you a kind of a health report on what we're seeing from our perspective. And hey, did you know this is happening? Or did you know this was occurring? Or hey, by the way, we feel like we can consolidate or we can streamline these for you to provide you, number one, efficiencies, which is great. But number 2, feel like you have more control now of what's actually happening. So I see us hopefully going back to more of the system of truths, the ERPs, the e-commerce, whatever those things are, and allowing us to do some more analysis on our side to kind of help say, you know, for the sake of implementation, but for the client's sake to say, you've probably never had someone do a really good kind of sniff test around your sales tax workflows. Let us do that today to provide that level of value. So that's number 1. As far as growth, yeah, we have got right now just an incredible kind of roadmap and vision. I think that we are in a great position because we're kind of past that initial growth phase of, you know, do we belong here? Do we have product market fit? Like, do we have partners that'll actually work with us? To now, I feel like we're strong in that, and now we want to go. I call it harvesting. The market is very, I think, ripe for a partner. You know, for a solution like us, partners are engaging with us. So, how can we go harvest quickly? How can we grow? And then how can we start to move up markets so we can start to provide value even to a higher level? And we're seeing that today. We're getting more well-known, you know, logos and things like that coming to us and reaching to us out directly. And so I see a logical movement, you know, up market. So we'll start to do that, and that'll take us into the SAP Oracle realm. And then logically from there, at some point, we'll have to consider a true international, you know, VAT e-invoicing solution as well as we expand, you know, internationally. So we'll only do that when the time is right, but that's the way I see today is continue to add vertical markets, the different specialty markets than what we do today. So we'll add some of the more complex ones, and then we'll start our kind of our march up market to handle SAP Oracle, larger clients, and then probably that'll lead us into international.
Yeah, one of the things that's been great to see with you guys is the partnerships, right? When you consider, you know, we're of course heavy and strong and call it our bread and butter is the compliance, right? It's actually managing the returns, managing the states, of course, remittances, just taking care of the ongoing compliance. And you guys are just this strong technology piece, both, you know, front end rate calculation, Also just working through, a lot of what you described of just managing the data, and, you talk about like exemption certificates and just managing all of that piece on the technology that creates the efficiencies. And even before it creates efficiencies, right? Just the necessary calculations and, again, the tens of thousands or 10,000, jurisdictions or so. So that, that was a clear one from the get go, right? Of like, here we are doing compliance and you guys plug in this technology piece. I imagine, well, I don't even imagine, I've seen it specifically with some of the other, either ERPs or like invoicing software, accounting solutions that are out there, of like the tremendous value that you guys bring to them as a partner, because it just makes their tool better, right? If I'm selecting a certain, accounting or finance or ERP, finance or accounting software, right? Or ERP, like I need the sales tax piece plugged in. So if I have Ceretax there that can plug in and be that and do all the things we talked about, right? We could go on and on about all that, but just in the most simple form, like having that piece in place and having confidence and peace of mind that it's there. I imagine that those, some of the relationships with those solutions get stronger and stronger because they see you guys come, and like most people, it's like, okay, this looks good, it sounds good, but does it actually work like this? And it does. And so can you talk more about some of those partnerships and maybe some specific experiences with some of those tools and where that's going?
Yeah, I think to date we've had great partnership experiences, what I'll call people in related, offerings like yourself and your company. A lot of different CPA firms, we've got great relationships as well. I think because we don't offer services, right? We have that platform mentality. Kind of our next evolution is going to be tighter relationship with the SIs, system integrators, and VARs, who are the ones implementing these ERPs, because we know that's where they'll take us to the broader, people that are going to be needing a solution, people that are going to be making a buying decision for a tax engine as they implement their next ERP. And so I think that when we get into that kind of mindset, we'll be doing the same thing as how do we enable our workflow, our tools to enable that conversion or that implementation to help those system integrators or VARs help us in that implementation process, because they're going to have similar challenges on converting from, let's say, a legacy Microsoft Great Plains ERP to the latest Microsoft Dynamics. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of configurations and things that they were built along the way that'll need to be moved and migrated. And so the system integrator is going to have that headache. So it's like, well, we already kind of know what we need. Maybe we can build some productivity tools to help you in that. So again, it's that platform mentality. Can I do things to help you be successful in your ERP implementation just for my little tax piece? Because to them, we're just like, do your job, do it well, don't mess up our implementation, don't delay us. But then I can say, but yeah, we'll do that. But we'll also, let's give you some things that maybe can help you where you can ensure success, right? You're not going to be tax experts. You're not going to know why all this stuff is under the hood, maybe in the legacy platform, but we know what we need. We know why it's probably there. So can we offer you some tools to help in that regard? So again, want to have great relationships with those, but maybe again, there's some ways we can think about it a little bit differently to where it becomes more of we're providing some benefit and solutions to them as well than just being, hey, I'm a tax vendor, when are you going to hook me up to your ERP? So we're starting to think kind of in that vein. We haven't yet had enough broad, I guess in our life, like we haven't had the broad yet depth to get with these VARs and kind of system integrators yet. We've got a few great relationships, but that's definitely where our focus will be, because between Microsoft, the NetSuite, and Sage, and QuickBooks, and all these other platforms, those are the integrations that'll take us to the broader kind of ocean. And so we'll be fostering those. But again, I want to really think of it more, what's valuable to you? What can we do to help in our one little piece of your implementation, maybe, process to make it easier?
Yeah, and it's such an important piece because it's annoying, right? It's sales tax. It's such a, like you say, it's a small piece of it, but it can become a big problem. It's actually no different than the due diligence that happens as companies are, getting ready to go to market and sell.
Yeah.
Right? When you have these M&A discussions and ultimately you're in the game of M&A, it's so easy and it makes sense to some extent to focus on all the other aspects of your business that are both going to make you successful and in some cases make you survive.
Yep.
And then when it comes to like what's important to investors or to buyers, it's like sales tax is not one of those things that comes to mind. It oftentimes gets pushed way down the list, right?
Right. Yeah. It comes up in diligence, or then it becomes an issue.
But then it does come up every time. Everyone will say that's in that space, the M&A space, that it's one of the top things that comes up that actually trips up a deal, or
It does.
it causes a roadblock. It's no different when it comes to the implementation of the sales tax software.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's annoying. It's a small piece of it, but it can become a big problem. So the systems integrators and the VARs need to have not just a great tool, but again, a great team and great support to where if a problem does come up, it quickly gets solved, because it's going to come up, right? There's always going to be problems, no matter how good the ERP is, and no matter how good Ceretax is.
Mm-hmm.
Problems come up just because it's the nature of business and software and connecting the dots, right? Or building the Legos, right?
Like, it is.
It's
it's kind of the same with our other clients, is that we want to be there and be very locked in with them, have a great relationship, and if something happens in that process, we've got to be, there's got to be kind of a lockstep there.
Yeah.
We can't just be on the other side of the curtain where, okay, we have a connector, here it is, good luck. We want to be a lot more collaborative in that regard, because again, for us, it's that, we do what we do well. We get in, we're not going to mess up you got a big, broader ERP implementation, but for this one piece, you got a team here that kind of wants to be involved, build maybe some great tools, utilities to help you in the process. We're going to be on call the whole time you need us. We'll be there kind of, lockstep with you, and just know that they can kind of trust us and rely on us. So when it comes to the ERP implementation, okay, we got the Ceretax team. We're good. We're going to be able to know this will be solved. We're not going to worry about it. We'll worry about this other more broader, painful part of the ERP implementation, where today, unfortunately, we hear them complaining a lot about that, to where, sometimes the sales tax part does become a problem in the overall ERP implementation, just kind of some of the kind of the legacy things that are going on. And we think we can solve that by really, truly being a partner. And again, it's just the same thing. It's just staying close, staying engaged, have that personal relationship, have a great solution, but make sure that whenever they're, kind of involved in that, they know they have a team here supporting them that understands what they're building, why they're building it, what the client's intent is for the upgrade, what do they need from us, and just staying very close into that. So again, it's going to be a little bit tougher as we broaden out that, because these SIs are very large, they have lots of people involved, and we have to have a very focused strategy. But again, to our core, if we can keep true to that relational kind of partner first mentality to kind of be on point, I think that'll be a winning strategy.
I agree, and it's actually that the benefit you have is that Avalara, being one of the biggest, not the biggest incumbent that companies look to, companies meaning the businesses themselves that use it, and then the systems integrators and VARs that are implementing all these solutions, and sales tax becomes part of it. Like Avalara is just the big one, right? That most of them are dealing with. And so as far as like go to market strategy, and it's not just a strategy, right? It's it's goes back to the core of what you guys are building, and your approach of like solving the problem. And so it's like, how do we talk to as many people as possible and get them to know Ceretax, and then understand how valuable it is, and just the value that it brings to the marketplace and ultimately to these companies. It's that piece is simple in the sense of like, if you're using Avalara, either as a VAR or SI, and Avalara is the tool that you look to oftentimes or every time, and then you have the businesses, same thing, that are using Avalara, considering it. It's like, look at Ceretax first. Like, just understand there's another solution, and it will probably be better. And one of the things where you guys constantly win on the value you bring, and even like the money part, right? The financial part, what it actually costs to put in place. And it's it's to some extent, it really is a unicorn sometimes when I see it, because here's the solution that's better, the team's better, the support's better, and oh, by the way, it's 10%, sometimes 20+% less expensive than the tool they're already using. Right? I could get on LinkedIn, I could post a video weekly of a situation with a company that's paying X amount for their current solution, and they're frustrated because there's not enough support. And we look at it and say, well, here's another solution, and it's, like I said, it's less expensive, and oh, by the way, you're going to actually have all the support and the human element to it, right? And that's one of the beautiful things that I see over and over again, and why we've held on and to this partnership, and not just held on, but we continue to build around it. And even like sitting down, taking time to do this, right? It's so important to stay connected with these partners, because like, again, sales tax is just, it sucks. Like, nobody likes it. But when there is something that sucks so bad and it's such a big problem for people, that's why we love doing what we do, because it is such a big problem to solve. So it frees up companies and founders and teams to just do what they do best and actually build success, whatever
Right.
that
Yeah.
success
As
means
long
to
as they
them.
know the pain behind it, but they're not experiencing the pain. That's when you know
Yep.
you've kind of truly kind of won the kind of won the race on that. But yeah, I think that again, that's kind of goes back to what our kind of our core kind of focus is with these SIs and the VARs, and kind of providing that level of value. And then how do we as a company go? I always think of those legacy companies like that have great company cultures, they grow and kind of go from that good to great mentality over time. So how do we encompass that and able to infuse that in the business as we grow as well? Because that's gonna be key. And being the smaller provider, like you said, with these legacy incumbents, to be honest, all we try to do as we get involved in these larger engagements is just, give us one shot, give us one revenue stream, give us one of your divisions, give us that one e-commerce, give us the one. And if it looks good and when you're happy, I'll say when you're happy, then the next one comes up, we'll get number 2 and 3. So it's like, large company, they've got $2 or $3 million of spend with a large provider. They're not going to go change that overnight. But if we can get one and make them happy, and then get 2, the next time something comes up in their discussions about a platform changing or bringing in an SI to change out a big ERP, they're like, wow, these first 2 times with Ceretax were so great. Why don't we consider them in this larger engagement? And so that'll be our strategy, is just like prove ourselves, walk the talk, get a foot in the door, and then over time, hopefully we'll be their full tax vendor of choice.
Yeah, it's the perfect approach, in my opinion, to a partnership. And really the clients are the partners.
Mm-hmm.
And saying, look, we're in this together. We're going to take, whatever piece we can get now. And it's not, okay, we got the contract, we got their money, you're stuck for
Right.
1 year, 2 years, 2 years, 3 years. It's like, no, we're in this together now. Like, let's prove this out. Let's do what a real partnership does, and like collaborate and build this together. And that's what is going to build, a long-term success for you as a company, and certainly with, the partnerships. And we've seen it as your partner, and we've seen it with the client partners. And it's just one of the things that we really appreciate about Ceretax and your team and the entire approach. And it's why it's the same philosophy that we have with our clients and our partners. So it's been beautiful so far.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we can keep that transparent kind of approach and mentality. Like I said, we're kind of like what you see is what you get, I hope, as a team. And I even tell that, to our employees, if a client has something that's going on or they're unhappy, I'll be happy to talk to them and tell them what we're doing, why we're doing it, what they're dealing with. I'm not trying to like hide behind a curtain or anything, but it's like, I'd love to be able to tell them kind of the reality of what we're doing and why we're doing it or what they're experiencing. So, again, it's all just, I think, being very open and saying, well, you're right. Maybe that wasn't the best thing we did, or that wasn't the best approach, but what can I do from here? Or, what do you need for us to do? Or can I come on site next week and talk to you about it? And so I think that's the level of, just that level of thing, open and honest, that we want to kind of perceive. And so, yeah, fortunately, we've had a great relationship, Danny, with you and your team. And I think we have a common kind of approach and mentality. And I hope that as we grow, we can kind of see that also evolve as well, because it's a very close market. It's, a lot of us have known each other for years in different, different hats and different, different companies along the way. But I think hopefully the reputation and kind of everyone works will kind of know, it says, okay, these people have a great track record. They walk the talk, they can be trusted. And then as we kind of get into these larger engagement, that hopefully that positive reputation will precede us into saying, okay, we can kind of see their track record will lend us to like this next larger engagement or this next large partner opportunity. So you just kind of chop the wood one day at a time and kind of keep true to your center and just say, we'll take care of today, take care of the clients today, take care of our partners today. And then, hopefully we'll build on, what we did today, tomorrow.
We'll keep doing it. Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, maybe so. It's fun.
We'll come out to Alpharetta next time.
There you go. I'm sure we can find a place like this out there.